Murder mysteries, a narrative genre full of thrilling stories and intense action, scattered with red herrings and the inevitable climactic twist. But what happens when elements of the supernatural become involved, making the mystery at hand seemingly impossible to solve? And how do you write something so complex? I'm chatting with game director Jonathan Stauder and narrative director Felice Kwan to learn how they crafted Life is Strange Double Exposure's supernatural murder mystery. Jonathan and Felice, it is so wonderful to be here with you. How does it feel now that you can finally talk about Life is Strange Double Exposure?
It has definitely been exciting to finally get to talk about what Tech9's been working on these past few years, and we get to talk more about the game today.
We are excited for fan theories about what's going on in the trailer.
Oh, we're going to have a lot of theories. Trust me, because a mystery is afoot, right? Mm-hmm. And that is the core premise of the game?
Right. But not just a murder mystery, it's a supernatural murder mystery. What initially starts as a whodunit in terms of the crime very quickly becomes a how could this have even happened? How is this even possible sort of crime? And then you, as the player, as Max, are uniquely suited to use your time powers to solve this crime.
Oh, can you tell me about Max, who she is and why she has time powers?
Right, so Max Caulfield, famous photographer, artist in residence at Caledon University, which is the setting of our game.
She's come to Caledon University to start afresh, to build a life that's separate from a past that she doesn't really want to think about anymore. But unfortunately for her, this mystery lands in her lap.
So Felice, can you set the scene for us? Because we've got mysterious pasts at play, but then also this is a very unusual murder mystery, right?
Right. So it is almost holiday break, dead of winter. Max walks up a hill and finds her friend Safi dead in the snow, seconds after seeing Safi talking on the phone. There are no footprints, there's no weapon. Police are completely stumped as to how it could have happened.
So there's not really any evidence or leads to go by. How do you solve a murder mystery like this? What tools might you have?
Luckily, Max unlocks a supernatural ability. She is able to shift from the current timeline into a parallel timeline where her friend Safi is alive. And fans of the first game will recognize this as kind of an evolution of her rewind power. And why exactly that has happened is at the heart of the story.
What the hell was that?
So my understanding is there are two timelines at play here, one in which Safi is still alive, and the other, she's been murdered. If I'm Max, why don't I just stay in the timeline where she's still alive?
Because Max will very quickly discover the killer is still at large in the timeline where Safi is alive. And so, using her new supernatural abilities, Max will have to both solve and prevent the same crime across two timelines.
So we're dealing with two timelines and a race against time to stop a killer before they kill again. This seems like it was very complicated to write.
It was really complicated. It was also very interesting because Max meets essentially two versions of every person that she's investigating, two versions of the environment, and these will both differ in ways that are significant because of Safi's death. It is also kind of bittersweet because even the people that Max is growing closer to, like Moses, there's two versions of him as well, and she needs to navigate that.
Can you tell us a bit more about Moses?
Yeah. So Moses is Safi's best friend, and he's an astrophysicist at this college. And because of his science background, he might be the only person who can help Max understand what's going on with her powers. And the two of them grow closer through this investigation. But Max has to wrestle with if she's ready to open up and tell someone about her powers for the first time in years.
Now, Jonathan, I can imagine that the multiple timelines also really lends itself to some interesting gameplay. Mm-hmm. What can we expect?
Well, so Max's ability to shift between the two timelines open up a whole slew of new gameplay possibilities for us. And so Max will be navigating between different versions of the same space impacted by Safi's death, and she'll be able to use these powers to circumnavigate puzzles, discover clues about suspects she might not otherwise have access to, in addition to navigating these different relationships in each space.
Oh, so like maybe in one timeline, a door is closed, in another, it's been unlocked, but it sort of depends on how you play the game, right?
Right.
Or Max can make sure that it is unlocked.
Oh, now we're learning. I'm going to write this down in advance. And you mentioned earlier that this is described as a quote-unquote impossible murder that only Max can solve. Why is that?
Because Max can talk to the murder victim. She's the only person who can do that, and it's her relationship with Safi that's the key to solving it.
Safi's alive.
Max, are you okay? It kind of seems like you're on drugs.
Huh? Oh. No, I'm just really happy you're here with me. And your mom.
So, drugs then.
So let's talk about Max's incredible new ability to bend time. Give us the lowdown on that.
Right. So Max has the ability to tear the fabric between these two timelines and instantaneously travel between them. We call it shifting.
That's a lot of responsibility, and that's a lot of power. Where does it come from? Because we know Max to have had powers in the past, right?
Yeah, she actually does not have her rewind powers anymore. She has not used it because of the trauma associated with it and fear of what might happen. And so when Safi is murdered, she can't rewind. It's like losing fluency in a language. But she does care enough about Safi that she's willing to use the new version of her power, the shifting, to try to help her friend. But why that has happened is Max doesn't know. It's kind of at the heart of the story.
So is Max kind of thrown by having this new power, or is she sort of old hat at this? She's like, yeah, I've just got another power, pile it on.
She definitely at first, she needs to use the power to investigate how the power works before she can even start to investigate the murder. So right off the bat, she is concerned, is this some version of rewind? Have I gone back in time? She doesn't know. And so she starts traversing the timelines, pulsing and listening in on folks across the veil and deducing how her power works.
Okay, so this pulse power, is that the thing that she does where it's kind of like an aura coming out of her fingertips and she can,
goes up.
What's that?
Right, so Max can extend her supernatural senses to detect where the veil is weakest between the two timelines, the spots where she can shift. And in doing that, she can also grab a glimpse of other people, key objects across the timeline without having to shift, which comes in really handy when you're a detective and you want to eavesdrop and snoop and track suspects.
So when she uses the pulse, she kind of like takes this glimpse into the two timelines, can make an assessment and then choose which one to shift into. How does the shift work?
Right, so when Max has identified one of these weak points between the timelines, we call them shift spots, she can use the shifting ability to instantaneously travel to the other timeline. So in a flash, she is instantaneously transported to the opposite version of the environment, different non-playable characters around. And so she's able to use that to traverse puzzles, circumnavigate locked doors, suspects that won't talk to her in one timeline but will in another.
Oh, so like, is it apparent to the player, yeah, I'm in this timeline where Safi's still alive, or I'm in this one where Safi's dead? Like, how will I know? I will like confuse myself playing this.
So
does Max get confused?
She does. She absolutely does get confused. And along the way, she has to learn what's different between the two timelines along with the player. But Safi's death not just reverberates through the relationships on campus, but also through the environment. And we reflect this in different ways, different set dressing, different audio, different lighting. The weather patterns change. It's the butterfly effect. And so Safi's death has this immense impact that creates two distinctly different timelines.
I do think that it will be really clear to both Max and the player where she's at. At the same time, she's juggling twice as many social interactions and twice as many clues. So she absolutely messes up. It's a lot of fun for Max to try to keep all of that straight.
Right. So she'll have to keep an eye out for dialogue choices, because if you're not paying attention, you might stumble into Max being confused about the timeline. Whereas if you're on your game, you can avoid those little faux pas in a conversation.
I'm sorry. I was being nosy. I don't know why. Probably just paranoid.
You think? Jesus, Max. Get your shit together.
And also, we're on a college campus, so she's supposed to be using this power to be solving a murder mystery, but I imagine there's probably also a lot of drama that filters through.
And she's an artist in residence, so she's supposed to be this mentor figure to the students who are still there on holiday break. But at the same time, it would be really useful to manipulate these students to solve this mystery, so she is juggling a lot.
So Max Caulfield, who has been so closed off for so long, now has to be like, okay, I have to juggle all these new social situations and put myself out there. It sounds like this is going to be a big learning experience for Max.
Now I have more impossible questions than I had to begin with.
I have to ask because I'm just so curious, which came first, the idea for Max to have this timeline shifting power, or did your team just want to experiment with the idea of multiple timelines?
We have been interested in multiple timelines for a while because of that gameplay possibilities. But I think it wasn't until we were exploring Max's story that it really clicked how we could do it in a way that felt absolutely intertwined with the emotional journey as well.
And shifting and traversing the timelines is in the player's hands. You have to trust the player is going to do it.
Yeah, the player over the course of the game is going to learn how to use this ability to navigate the environments, the relationships, and then at a certain point, we just trust the player to navigate and solve this mystery.
When I woke up, Safi was gone forever. And now, I am in a whole new world of questions. What are these worlds? Timelines? Realities? Where did this new power come from? Is Rewind gone forever? Lucky for me, one question clearly takes priority. How do I protect the Safi I have left?
Now, as a big fan, I am so happy that Hannah Tell is returning as Max. But for people who are new, players who are new to the Life is Strange franchise, do they have to go back and play all of the older titles? What's the point of entry for them?
You don't have to at all. All of the Life is Strange games stand on their own and have their own story. And so for Life is Strange Double Exposure, players will have everything they need to understand the emotional context of Max's past, but it is a brand new location in a small college. There's new characters. You can absolutely start with this first game.
Seems like Safi rubbed a few people the wrong way.
How should I know? Go talk to somebody who's been here longer than 6 months.
We do all know that Life is Strange is all about choices and the consequences of those choices, for better or worse. So for returning players like me, who made really hard decisions that we now have to live with, do we bring those with us to Life is Strange Double Exposure?
Yes, so the returning players from Max's first adventure will remember that there's a massive decision to make at the end of that game, results in 2 very different endings. And it was really important at Deck 9, if we were going to make another Max adventure, that the game would have to respect both those endings. Life is Strange Double Exposure does that very thing. There's no canon ending in our book to the first game. Double Exposure will respect both endings in Max's thoughts, her journal, her SMS, her interactions with other characters, what she opts to reveal about her past to her new friends. It's all reflective of that final choice.
For all of us players who were racked with guilt making those tough decisions, who kind of crave making decisions like that again, will we have lots of those choices that keep us up at night playing Life is Strange Double Exposure?
Yeah, Max will face a lot of tough decisions. It's kind of her thing.
Perfect. That's what I want. Bring it on. And so it's been so long since the original game came out. For players who maybe don't have the original console that they played on, or let alone the save file from their Life is Strange 1 game, how will they import their previous choices?
So Safi and Max will have a conversation that's pretty early on in the game, and Arcadia Bay just comes up naturally in that conversation. So players can remake the choice then, or they could try the other way.
Okay, so it sounds like Safi is kind of like a little interrogation there with Max.
Safi's very curious about Max because Max is generally pretty closed off, and Safi knows there's something interesting there.
Okay, so that's where we're going to see this backstory come into play. Very, very cool. So it sounds like new players are all good to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. It was very important to us that for folks entirely brand new to the franchise and brand new to Max Caulfield as a character, that everything they need to know about her is right there in Life is Strange Double Exposure. And then for returning players, we absolutely honor the biggest, most impactful decision you're going to remember from that first game and carry that forward so you can see how that plays out in Max's latest adventure.
Is this about the blue-haired girl whose picture you keep in your wallet?
Wait, you snooped in my wallet?
Stop deflecting. The girl with the blue hair. What's the deal with you two?